In this video, we are going to talk about I guess it's a more complex version of a variable, and it's referred to as an array. So as you can see in the subtitle here, variables with a little extra. So what exactly are arrays? Arrays are what are considered a complex variable, and it allows you to store multiple values. So if you remember back to the first video on variables, the information that was contained in the quotation marks after our variable and after the equal sign was our value. Well, in arrays, we are allowed to store multiple values that are all related to a single variable. One of the ways that you can think about an array is as a container variable. In other words, it holds multiple variables. So for an example, in an array, we have the variable pizza, $pizza, equals. Now you're going to see the word array. This is what indicates that there's going to be multiple values, and they're held together between parentheses and separated by commas. And now if some of you are like me, where I'm kind of a grammar freak, it irritates me to no end that the commas go on the outside of the quotation marks. But that's the way it needs to be, because otherwise, if it were inside the quotation marks, then that comma becomes part of that value. So in this case, with our pizza array, we have 4 values. We have sausage, pepperoni, olives, and mushrooms. So if we look at the example directly below it, where it says, my favorite topping is, and then it opens up a PHP statement and says, echo, and this is how we show the item, the value that we want to have displayed. So we have the variable followed by a square bracket and a number. And you'll notice that there are 4 values in our pizza array. So we are looking for value number 2. So I'm going to let you take a guess here that this displays the sentence, my favorite topping is. I want you to think about it or test it. Here's the little hint. Array indexes start from 0, not 1. So let's look at this again. This is that same array, and it says my favorite topping is. That will display my favorite topping is olives. So if we look at this, we go 0 is sausage, 1 is pepperoni, 2 is olives. So if we're saying echo pizza, value 2 in the square bracket, then our sentence will finish out and say, my favorite topping is olives. So those were basic arrays. There's another type of array that's referred to as a 2-dimensional array. In essence, it's an array of arrays. So think about this as a group of groups, because that's really what an array is. It's a fancy way of saying it's a grouping of something. So here is an example, and this starts to look complicated, but it really isn't. So let's break this down. We have $car, that's our variable, equals array. So everything that falls after it is an item or a value. And in this case, there are 2 sets. So inside of the array, and then we have an opening parenthesis, we say there's another array. So the first value, the first item, is array, and then it contains 3 values, Pontiac, Trans Am, and 1969. And then we close the parenthesis and put a comma, and this is what separates our arrays. So then the second one is array Chevy, Corvette, 1978. At the very end, you can see that there looks to be a double set of closing parentheses, but that's because we have to close the parentheses after the first word array that's containing all of these arrays, as well as the one for that last Ford Mustang array. So let's take a look at how we display this. In the sentence we have, it's echo, my favorite car is the, and then we have our $car. And now because we have 2, we have to give 2 indicators of which array and which value in the array we're looking at. So the first value is which array we're looking at. And there are 3 of them here. And remember, if they start with 0, we go 0, 1. So that would be that second row where it's Chevy Corvette 1978. And we're looking for the number 2 within that. So now if we look at that and we count out in that row, we go Chevy is 0, Corvette is 1, and 1978 is 2. So now my sentence says, my favorite car is the 1978. Then the second variable that's listed here is car, and it's looking in row 1 again, which is the same one we were looking in, and it's now looking for the value that holds space 0. So that would be Chevy. And then the last one is also in that same row of array. It's looking for the value that holds the number 1 spot. So in this case, it would read, my favorite car is the 1978 Chevy Corvette. And then there's one last type of array that we are going to cover in this class, and it's called an associative array. And basically what an associative array is, 2 different values that are related to each other. And so it's made up of 2 parts. The first is called a key, and that's the name, and the second is the value. So an example of what an associative array looks like is what we see below. If we say $teams is our variable, and then we have that word array that says that this is an array, each item in this case would say Montreal, and then we have the equal sign and the greater than sign to form that little arrow that says Montreal is associated with the Canadiens. And after that we have a comma, and so that's considered as one item, one grouping within this. So the comma separates it just like it would in another sort of array. So this one says Montreal is associated with Canadiens and New York is associated with Rangers. So let's see what this looks like in action. So here's our associative array. We have the same one, but now we're going to echo it, and we're going to say the nickname of the New York hockey team. Yes, I know there's multiple, but just for the sake of this example, the nickname of the New York hockey team is the $teams, and now we are using that key or that name, which means it's the first value in this. This would actually read, the nickname of the New York hockey team is the Rangers. Let's look at this a slightly different way. We can also break this down. Remember we said that there was a key and a value, and the first one is the key, so Montreal would be the key, and the Canadiens would be the value. Well, we can put these in a for each loop, and we're not really going to talk about loops, but you can test this out. We're going to get to loops in a couple weeks, but not right now. Test this out, and don't worry about so much how it works. But the cool thing is with for each loops is it goes through each of those pairs of associations within the array until it runs out of information. So in this example, we say there's teams, an array, Montreal is associated with Canadiens, New York is associated with Rangers. So we create this for each loop by using the words for each, and it's all one word, lowercase. And in parentheses, we say teams, which is our variable from up above, as name is associated with nickname. So those become 2 new variables. And in this case, I'm using the word print. It's okay, print or echo, both of them will work. So print the nickname of the $name. So if we look right up above, name is associated with nickname. So it's going to pull the first one. It's going to pull that key. So the nickname of the Montreal hockey team is the nickname, and that's the part that it's associated with. And so it would say the name of the Montreal hockey team is the Canadiens. And then it would go through and it would create another sentence that would say the nickname of the New York hockey team is the Rangers. And it would end right there. That's a for each loop, but it's reached the end of the data. So if we added more team names, it would go and it would run that as well. So those are the 3 different types of arrays that we're going to be dealing with in this class. The basic array, the 2-dimensional array, and the associative array. So now are you ready to do our second exercise, which will be, of course, dealing with arrays?